I live in a smallish town where high school swimming is kind of the culmination of where anyone is ever going to get. And
Yeah.
I didn't make it on the record board and was really upset about it. And so I decided to, I guess, show myself and maybe everyone in our small town that high school swimming is not the end all. So
Nice.
that's kind of where I started. And
Hello and welcome to Marathon Swim Stories, where we explore the human side of the superhuman feats of endurance swimmers and those who support them. I'm marathon swimmer and coach Shannon Keegan. Do you enjoy Marathon Swim Stories? Tell a friend about it, or leave a review with your podcast provider. Want to give some feedback? I'd love to hear from you. Shannon@intrepidwater.com. I hope you enjoy today's episode.
Hello, Joelle. Welcome to Marathon Swim Stories. This is new. I just started saying this recently. Welcome to Marathon Swim Stories. Tell me, what's your story?
so my story, well, I'm in my 30s right now, but I swam USA like competitive swimming as a little kid, and I swam high school, and I live in a smallish town where high school swimming is kind of the culmination of where anyone is ever going to get. And
Yeah.
I didn't make it on the record board and was really upset about it. And so I decided to, I guess, show myself and maybe everyone in our small town that high school swimming is not the end all. So
Nice.
that's kind of where I started. And
What town?
where are you at? Sorry.
Oh, it's just what town? What small town?
Oh, I am in Brigham City, Utah. So I'm about an hour north of Salt Lake City. So,
Okay. Awesome.
So I think it's a big town, but it's like 18,000 people. It's not a very big town. So,
yeah.
But
so what, where did you go after high school swimming?
Well, I actually just kept swimming on my own. And because of a lot of people would like tease me and be like, well, why are you swimming now? Like, you're done. What are you going to do with it? Why work out and torture yourself? Because if you're not competing in swim meets every day, then why torture yourself with workouts? And for me, the workouts were actually kind of the most fun part. And so because I was not a sprinter, and I discovered that after high school that I was not a sprinter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I can think I had a similar experience. So yeah, tell me.
So I don't know. I started open water swimming in 2011. So about 10 years ago now. I was terrified of open water swimming. Absolutely terrified. I was on a study abroad in Annecy, France, and I was like, well, let me try and swim in the lake a little bit. And I was swimming out to the buoy, like physically wasn't hard, but was mentally terrifying. And that's really where I started. And then I realized it wasn't quite as terrifying as I thought. And I started swimming in reservoirs just around where there are 2 or 3 reservoirs within half an hour of where I live. And started swimming in
company. Like
I did not. I mean, my sister and my mom, like on the beach or on like a kayak next to me, but no swimmers in the water with me.
Wow. That does take a lot of courage, I find, myself in open water.
So my very first, I would say, real open water swim, we have a lake that is 6.5 miles across, Bear Lake, right on the border of Utah and Idaho. And it's 19 miles long. And my sister and I decided to swim across it. And my sister swam across it with me. And it was both of us, it was our very first real open water experience beyond swimming to a buoy. Yeah, and awesome. I loved it, and my sister hated it and hasn't really done one since, even though she like is very capable of long distance swimming. But because she was scared of like what was underneath and like, the grasses that were touching her and things like that. But so we swam, that was my first really open water swim was, and it was in a thunderstorm the last hour actually.
Oh my gosh.
So it was not, I think that's really what pushed my sister away, but I don't know, I kind of liked the thrill of it and wanted to push myself more. So
yeah, that's a beautiful lake. When my husband was in school in Salt Lake and I was working in Idaho, so we would do the drive. Anyways, we camped there a few times. It was way before my open water swimming days, but I remember thinking it was cold at the time. That was cold for me, but it's so beautiful. I just love it. So did the width, the 6 mile width?
I did the width, the 6.5 mile width. Yeah, and the water is, well, I kind of call it the Tahoe of Utah. I mean, because it's that crystal clear, bright blue water. So
it's beautiful. Yeah.
So that was our first experience. So
awesome. Then what? So you loved it. Sister hated it. I have a similar situation with my sister.
So we wanted to get into open water swimming and do something hard, but we didn't know I didn't know, and that there was this open water swimming community at all. And so I picked the only swim I had ever heard of, the English Channel.
Of course.
So that swim in the storm across Bear Lake was actually our personal test to see if we could do something longer. And we had actually already paid our deposit for the English Channel, and my sister pulled out and didn't get her deposit back.
Oh,
and
wow.
I didn't pull out. And so I swam across and back Bear Lake. So that same lake I swam a double width, 13 miles as my 6-hour qualifier.
Awesome.
In the last day of October, or not October, the last day of September in 2011, so that I could wait until it got cold enough for it was 61 degrees. It wasn't quite 60, but.
Wow. Did you have any trouble with the cold or any learnings, like without a community kind of to learn from? Where did you get your information for how to prepare for that?
So I didn't really get information. I really went into this not knowing at all what I was doing. My parents bought a really ancient, like a 35-year-old motorboat that they could bring next to me, because they thought, well, 13 miles is a little long to paddle if we've never paddled before. And we didn't know that paddling with a kayaker was even something at the time, because we were so inexperienced.
Yeah.
So they just idled next to me in a motorboat, and we did a cross and back, and I had Gatorade, but I also didn't realize that on longer swims people usually eat. And so I really didn't know what I was doing at all. But I did my 6-hour qualifier, and the water was like glass that day. The air temperature was actually mid 80 degrees.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So the cold water didn't bother me because the air temperature was so warm. And
right. Yeah.
Which was misleading, because my very next open water swim I ever did was the English Channel.
Oh, wow. And okay. So you did pool training all winter?
I did pool training. Yes. I did not do another open water swim of even 1 mile up until the English Channel.
Wow.
Just pool training. I mean, so I did like a 10-mile swim in a pool, which was a long way in a 25-yard pool.
In a 25-yard pool. That's a huge testament of your mental fortitude, I would say.
And I definitely got some, that long in a pool, people like, why are you swimming for 5 hours in a pool without stopping? I mean, definitely some weird looks and weird comments, but.
Yeah, but to push through all that, I think, like I said, that's a huge test of your mental fortitude.
So that was that's what started it, really. So.
And then next year, 2012.
So 2012, I went to England for the English Channel. And there was another person in Utah that I had been told, oh, this person did the channel like a week before. And so I found him on Facebook and sent him a list of questions saying, hey, I have no clue what I'm doing. What did you do for food? And tell me a little bit about it. And he gave me a list of some tips he did. And that instead of trying to use like a pole with a basket to, tie your water bottle to a rope, and like, oh, that makes sense. Why wouldn't I have thought of that? And gave me a few tips like that about 5 days before my swim. And
wow.
I did all the tips that he did, and I was very thankful that I contacted him. And now I'm friends with with him, and we have trained together and that. But other than playing waist deep at the beach in the ocean, my first ever ocean swim was the English Channel.
Wow.
I swam it was September 3rd. So it was still right middle of the season. It was pretty warm that way. But I waited for a week and a half, and I because the weather was so bad and it was just high winds and just rain and it was really cold weather and just miserable. So, so I actually missed my window.
Oh no.
For swimming. And then, so I was bumped back into, to a spring tide. And so I had just, the stronger tides and that. I had also never done night swimming because I had never done any open water swimming. So I started at 2 a.m. And so when they told me like, okay, the water's going to be cold and we can't go up to the beach. You have to jump out and swim to the beach. Like that right there, I about had a panic attack. I was like, this is not what I was expecting. And I don't know what I was expecting. I just didn't really know anything. And I was 20, I was 24 at the time. So I was young enough that naive that, okay, sure, I'll just go do whatever.
Right.
But I jumped in and I got a mouthful of salt water and the water was so cold that I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. And I started hyperventilating and it took me a good like 30 seconds to, okay, calm down. You will get used to the cold. You knew it was going to be salty. Yeah. Just go for it. And so it took me, a good 30 seconds to like really collect my thoughts and realize I can do this. So,
wow. Yeah.
So that was my start of open water swimming.
So how did it go? Did you find the beach? You started, I
found the beach. I definitely, but as I calmed my breathing down and found the beach, I definitely like, I'm a religious person. So I like said a prayer, like, hey, God help me do this because I don't think I can, if not. And, then, and I started and I realized as I got into the rhythm, I like, oh, this isn't so bad. So it was really just that first minute. And, because I was so scared of the swimming in the dark at the time, because I never had the English Channel, like they lit up the water all around me. And like as soon as I got out to I was with, Reg and Ray Brickle and the Viking Princess. And as soon as I got out to the boat and like, oh, it's not dark anymore. And the boat is, 10 feet from me. And like, I can do this. And my parents were both standing right there. So, nice. So as soon as I got into that rhythm, it really wasn't that bad. So, but
how did it go?
It was great. It was, again, also things that were misleading that I didn't know of. So I had never seen a swim track to realize that people swim in an S shape. And so when it was finally light, hours later and I could see the land, I was like, oh, like, cause I wasn't looking for the land. I try and never look ahead of me and I never want to know the distance. But at one point, like as I breathed, I could see the land and I was like, oh, well, it's like next to me. It's not like in front of me. What's going on? But I was like, but it's super close. And 3 hours later, I'm still not touching the land because I didn't realize at the time you swim in an S shape. And so just like things like that I had no clue of. I didn't know to expect. But the main thing that was hard for me was the cold. Like I didn't get where I train at high elevation. We're at 4,200 feet, so 4,200 feet. And so the breathing wasn't hard, but the cold, I was freezing that entire swim. So I was like imagining blankets and like sitting in front of a fire and drinking hot chocolate the whole time. Yeah. The cold was, the weather had been cold enough. It dropped the water to drop like a degree or two just in that week from when my friend had done it to when I did it. And so it was between 59 and 61, which for a lot of people is not that cold. I had never been in the ocean.
That is really, so it
was cold.
It's a long time to be in that kind of water. You really do have to warm yourself mentally from the inside, like if you're going to feel the cold, that's how I think of it. It's like that you're warming yourself from the inside out, but like that's exactly you got to kind of endure. I love the mental, like what you were saying about sitting by a fire. Like
thinking of like hot chocolate, warming my insides out, like you said. So, in fact, they did at one point, warm I had Gatorade with honey. I put like a huge, probably a cup of honey in each bottle of Gatorade. So you have huge amounts of honey. But they did put it in the microwave and give it to me heated at one point when I was like, I'm cold. Can you do something? And so they gave me a heated Gatorade and, which helps. So yeah. And then so that was my first experience. And I finished right at the Cap Greenay. So I finished at the cliffs. So I had to climb out on a rock. Like I didn't have a beach, like if you were to finish it like with sand or that. So, that was, and it was, other than the really cold that I was not used to, I guess it was like not super eventful. I got one jellyfish sting, but not a huge amount. And
how did you kind of fight through that cold, like knowing it's cold and like knowing the boat's right there? You could just get out. Why did you keep going?
Because I have very much the attitude of no one's going to tell me I can't do something. And so like, to me, I felt like it would be worse than like, well, why would I get out because it's cold? Like, I'm not tired yet. And compared to the cold. And so like, why would I get out?
Yeah.
And so I guess just trying to be mentally stronger than like the cold and just telling myself that. I also, through the night, I think once the day came out and the sun came out and you were closer to France and the water's slightly warmer, it wasn't quite so cold. Yeah. Then, but definitely towards the end of the night, I had I like musicals. So like the Les Mis, Even the Darkest Night Will End and the Sun Will Rise, like that was going through my head. Like, yeah, it'll get light and it won't be so bad. And you're right. Like sun comes up and you get more energy and you warm up a little bit. And
That's great. So you finish, you're in France. Well, you have to go back to the boat. What did your parents say?
My mom like said, well, I know that you have a lot of like willpower. So she's like, I knew you would do it just like you knew you would do it. My dad told me until the last couple of miles, he was like, I don't know if she'll do it. I just don't know if she'll do it. I don't think she can. Like, this is far. And so he said it really until the last couple of miles. Like he honestly was like doubting that I would do it just because we didn't know that was a thing that was like done. And that, I don't know, it was just seemed so out there that my dad said until the last little bit, then he didn't think I would actually do it. So
did you, with the weather, like getting pushed and everything, did you meet other swimmers and stuff while you were in Dover?
I didn't. So again,
your family.
I was so naive with everything that I didn't know that there was like a training group in Dover or that people swam in the harbor. Cause to me, like, why would you swim in a harbor? I mean,
Inlander, I totally get it. Grew up in Colorado, so I'm with you. It's like, wow.
So I'm lake swimming. Like I had no clue about anything ocean or cold water. So so I didn't even know that was an option. So I found again a pool. I found a pool there to swim in, a 25-yard pool that I trained in for the week I was waiting, but did not set foot in the ocean once until I swim. So, but my sister was with us, and the next day she's like, I just want to play at the beach. Like we've done a lot of churches and castles, and she put her toes in the water, and this is cold. I'm not getting in that water. And like, I know it's cold. Like I was in there yesterday for 12 hours. So,
what did you decide after the English Channel?
For the first couple of days, I you can't move your arms, and I was like this is, and it took me probably a day or two to thaw out. So it wasn't until like a few days later that I was like, wow, like I did this, and this was actually kind of cool. I wonder what else there is out there.
Yeah.
And so then I got in touch with my friend more. Now he's my friend. I guess we became friends after this.
Yeah.
And he told me like, well, did you know there's this California one you can do too? And so then I started to get into the open water swimming community a little bit and finding out there were all these other things out there and all these people you could train with. And so we signed up together for Catalina Island to do the next year.
Oh, cool.
And then I found a training group of 3 people, just that live, within an hour of me. And we would meet up at this reservoir once or twice a week and just do a sunrise swim. And so for 5 to 8 a.m. or so, and swim a couple miles. And so then I had, swam a lot more like open water just that summer, swam in just reservoirs. And, we would do, 5 or 7 miles once or twice a week. And, so I did Catalina the next year, in August, and my friend came out, and so I did mine August 12th. He did August 14th. So we watched each other's finish. And, but that one I felt like I was much more prepared for because I found some social media like groups. I found a training group. I swam in a lake pretty routinely throughout the season. And so I was much more prepared for that one. And so as and I saw, like, I had seen some swim tracks of people doing it. And I was like, oh, well, and this one's straight. So you're not swimming like an extra, 6 or 7 miles. And, so I knew what to expect a lot more for the California one. And the water was like, it's not warm, but it's not the English Channel. Right. And so I was a lot more prepared and a lot more confident going into the California, Catalina Island swim. Until we got out there, again, I started at midnight and there were flying fish. Like we got out there and like all these flying fish started, and I was like, what on earth is happening to the water? And like, oh, they're just flying fish. It's fine. And I was like, okay, well, like, again, I swim in a lake where there's nothing but trout. Like, this is scary. And they're like, well, there's nothing to be scared of. I mean, they're filming Shark Week, like right now, 10 miles away, but that's 10 miles from us. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we're filming Shark Week, not very far away. And like, so then, and then a sea lion was chasing these flying fish. And again, like, I was like, okay, well, a sea lion and flying fish might not hurt me, but if a sea lion is in the water and flying fish are in the water, what else could be in this water?
Yeah.
And as they were shining the spotlight on the rocks, like, and you want me to jump out with all these animals, like flying around? And then they were telling me, oh, well, you have to swim through the kelp and it'll feel like something's grabbing you, but really just keep swimming and you're fine. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to jump in this water. So the crew, I guess I didn't know this, but they told my parents were my crew again. But the boat crew, I guess, gave me a nickname of like the timid person or something. Cause I took a good, like 5 minutes just standing on the platform. Like, okay, I need to like work up my courage to jump in with all these sea lion and flying fish. And the kelp were definitely somewhat terrifying, as it felt like something was grabbing my
grabbing kelp.
Yeah. So, but then that swim was, I had bioluminescence throughout the whole night of that swim. So like every pull, I was like a fireworks show in my face. So that was really, really neat. And my family said they could see like the outline of my body just with the silhouetted by the bioluminescence.
Mm-hmm.
That was really neat just because I had the bioluminescence. And then right around sunrise came, I had dolphins swimming just a little ways away that I could hear them constantly underwater. And my family would tell me they were there. And if I lifted my head up, I could like kind of like see, but they were far enough away from the water. I couldn't see very well, but I could hear them a lot. So that was, swimming with dolphins and the bioluminescence. So I think that was the swim where I also, because I had never been in the dark still, because even in the lake, I hadn't ever done a night swim. And so the English Channel still was my only night swim, but they lit the water up all around me.
Wow.
And so for the first half an hour, they kept lights on for me. And then finally the boat crew was like, so we need to be honest with you here. The lights are going to attract sharks. And I was like, oh, well, okay. Like turn the lights off. And so the first like half an hour swimming in like pitch black with seeing nothing but the glow sticks on the boat was pretty terrifying for me until I realized like, I can't see anything but these glow sticks and the bioluminescence. Like, and then I got like, then it was so peaceful. And now I actually love swimming in the dark because like, it's just peaceful and there's nothing but me. And so I realized like swimming in the dark can be a really peaceful experience. And so I hadn't experienced that before because I had never swum in the pitch black. And so I really like, I mean, it's still great when light comes, but I realized like swimming in the dark can be peaceful, like when you're in calm conditions and you're just going and there's nothing else. So I really enjoyed that. So
very cool. Did the wind pick up or anything? Any trouble with your feeds? Anything? Or
so I had some major shoulder problems. That my shoulder just was hurting more and more throughout, and the water wasn't super cold, but it was cold enough that it was affecting my shoulder. So, I mean, so that was really painful. So having to just kind of mentally, okay, my shoulder is going to be okay. I just need to keep going. My feeds were okay. Although I had a sister on the boat who was throwing up the whole time, who was like somewhat distracting for my parents who were trying to like take care of her as she's throwing up the whole time. And it wasn't even seasick. She actually found out it was a food allergy, but she works on a boat. So she was like, why would I be sick? I work on a boat. But anyway, so that was one of the more distracting things. But that one, so I have 4 siblings, and I'm the oldest, so I was young enough, my siblings were still high school age. So my whole family came, and they all came on the boat with my parents.
Oh, wow.
And so my brother said the weirdest thing for him was he went to bed and I was, just right next to the boat on the right side of the boat swimming. And he woke up 8.5 hours later and I was still next to the boat, still doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So something that from a different perspective that I hadn't thought of, he's like, it was weird. Like I slept a full night and you're still there doing the same thing. And so that was kind of interesting to hear my brother's perspective of it. But and then the finish on that one was, I mean, it was light, you finish at the beach. There was an opening in the kelp. So they're like, no, like there's an opening that you're not going to get grabbed by the kelp. It's light, take your time, just swim through there. I had my friend who was doing it 2 days later was on the beach with his family,
cool.
just waiting. And so that was neat to have like people that I knew there and to greet me at the finish. And I grabbed my rock that on the English Channel, I was finishing like at cliffs, so I couldn't grab a rock to take with me. So I grabbed my rock to take with me. And I did actually pull all the skin off 2 of my fingers, as I didn't realize like your skin is so soft, any like bump can.
Right.
So I actually have like, it was such a small thing at the time, but I actually have scars on my hands from that one that I can tell people, well, this is a scar from when I swam 21 miles. Like, so, but
how'd you get the idea to pick up a rock?
My friend told me. So like, he was like, hey, you're supposed to pick up a rock to like show you finished. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that, but sure. Yeah. So I just picked up the rock, stuck it in my suit and swam back to the boat. And then on the boat on the way back, we saw dolphins again. So then I could see like, actually see like, oh yeah, this is what was like what I could hear while I was swimming. So that was the wildlife on that one was really neat. Just the bioluminescence and the dolphins and the flying fish and the sea lions.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So that was neat.
And then what was next?
So then as I was new to all this, I was told, well, if you do this third one, then it's like makes up a triple crown. And I was like, oh, well, let's try it. Yeah. So I applied for Manhattan and I got in, to the, it was Manhattan Island swim. It wasn't 20 bridges. Yeah. And so they had 3 waves of about 25 swimmers. And so I got into the second wave and my friend was I was like the second swimmer on the second wave and my friend was the last swimmer on the first wave. So we went different, he went the weekend before I did. But we still trained together.
Is this the next year then? You did
this was the next year. So this was 2014. So I went to Manhattan, in 2014. And that was the first swim I had ever done that was like, it wasn't a solo, it was with people. So I thought that was really neat to like, I mean, I, started to meet people that were, like I talked to like a lady from Ireland and a guy from Spain and from, Canada. So that was neat to talk to all these people. And I was used to when you do like, I don't know, races that are with people that like, they're your opponents because it was, in a pool and it was like high school swimming. Yeah. And so the camaraderie I thought was really neat as we're all riding the boat from the pier to like the starting point and like everyone's just chatting and everyone's laid back and it's already daylight instead of starting in the middle of the night. Yeah. Yeah. So that was really neat, just the camaraderie. And I was so surprised at how like informal it was. So they're like, well, I guess you should jump out of the boat now. And then they were like, well, should we just start or should we do a countdown? And so one of the swimmers, like, as we're all treading was like, well, let's do a countdown. And so like, they did a countdown. They're like, all right, well, so they did a countdown, I think from 5 and then they're like, okay, well, let's go. And it was like, so informal. And I was like, wow, this is like so different than like, diving off the starting block with a buzzer, like where it's like, you start exactly when the buzzer goes off. And so I thought I liked it because it was like, we're racing kind of, but I mean, it's really so informal. And so I really liked that. And I breathe to my left, which, I think more people tend to like for a swim. I mean, I bilateral when I'm training, but in a swim, I always breathe to my left.
Interesting.
And so I got to watch the like whole island and because I breathe to my left the whole time. And so that was really nice to see, like not just a boat with like, and the scene never changing. So that was really neat. But I actually really struggled the first little bit on that one. The meeting before the race, they said, well, we're short on kayaks. And so is there anyone that would be willing to swim without a kayak? So I said, sure, I've never swum with a kayak before. So I'll go without a kayak. I didn't know that's because the boat isn't next to you. Oh, and so like you're feeding boat with your crew because it's such a busy, although rivers are so busy, they sometimes have to go out into the deeper water or into the middle while you're at the edge. And so I didn't know my boat was going to not be next to me. And so I was so for the first, I think 3 hours of the swim, like I was trying to spot off people so one of my feeds, my dad was like, you are way behind everyone and you're not going to make the cutoff. Like, cause that one, if you have certain times, you have to make certain bridges. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, you're not going to make the cutoff. You're going to get pulled cause you're not swimming straight. And I was like, well, I can't tell where to go. Like I have nothing to like watch. And I was trying to watch a boat that was, 25, 50 yards in front of me and where's their kayaker? So finally some guy came next to me and was like, so I'm an extra kayaker. I don't know why they told you there aren't enough, but like this person I'm paddling for has 2 kayakers. And so do you want me to switch and be your paddler? And so after about 3 hours, I had a paddler come join me and I caught up to the group and because they call it the Hell's Gate, where like you just get stuck in, but from the east to the Harlem River, you just get stuck in like a whirlpool. So the people that got there fast got stuck in that for an hour, and gave me time to catch up. And I was only stuck in it for 10 minutes before the tides switched. And so I caught up to the group. And once I had a kayaker, it was much, much better. And like went how I expected. Like I could go straight. I could just look at my kayak. I didn't have to try and spot off of everyone clear ahead of me. So that was the hardest thing for me on that. Just that first couple hours where I had like no guidance.
Yeah. Wow. That's really cool. Yeah. Anything else from that one that was interesting?
George Washington Bridge, when it seems close, is really not close. Like we came out of the Harlem River, and I was like in the Hudson, and I was like, oh, the bridge is right there. Like we should be under that in an hour. And then like 2 hours later, you're not. And then I was like it just seems like it takes forever to get to that George Washington Bridge. So then when I saw the new Trade Center, the Freedom Tower, because that's about where you finish. Then I was like, okay, I need to not do what I did with the George Washington Bridge and realize like, just because I can see it doesn't mean I'm almost there. Like I still have quite a ways to go.
Right.
And so the thing that surprised me on that one was towards the finish, like we were all like, a lot of people were all a minute or so apart from each other, which I was surprised on a swim that long that we would all be that close. And so like towards the end, like I had one or two people pass me. I passed 2 or 3 people because we were all like so close, which I was surprised on a swim that long that we would be that close. I'd expect you to be 10 minutes apart or something, and we weren't. So that was kind of surprising. But and then at the end, like you all get out on the pier and there's a big party they all have together. Like they provide dinner, and which instead of just getting in your car and going home. So I thought that was really like the camaraderie of that one. It was, and like I've stayed in touch with some of the people from that swim, and so that was kind of fun. So
yeah. What does your town think of you at this point? You've done the Triple Crown. You were they thought it was all over after high school swimming.
so actually after the English Channel, we have a like small town newspaper that comes out, once a week, very small. And they did the whole front page was me with like the English Channel.
That's awesome.
So like the picture with me with my arm out with a sailboat in the background, like with the sunrise, like really neat picture. And it was like took up like the whole front page of the small town newspaper. After the English Channel. So then after that, because it's such a small town, the editor like would email me like, hey, tell me when you're doing your next swim.
Yeah.
And so they like posted an article for the California one and for the Triple Crown one. And they did a whole explanation of what the Triple Crown means. Cause if you're not in this open water swimming community, it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
And then actually at the end of the year in December, when they had stories of the year, the Triple Crown one made it in a second time as like, this was the story of the year. So it was in the newspaper a lot, like people, but like I was always wearing a swim cap, and it was like always a swimming shot of me. And so like when people like see me at the pool still training, or like at the local reservoir training, they'll be like, wait, like who are you? And then they're like, wait, and then I'll tell them, and they're like, are you that person that was in the paper for the channel? Like, yes, that was me. So, but so it's kind of neat because like I coach youth swimming too, and so I had some like kids join my swim team just because like, oh, we saw you in the paper, let's join your swim team. So
that's very
cool. Kind of fun to like, have kids that were like 8 or 9, like join the swimming just because of that. So, so
yeah. Have you inspired any other open water swimmers in your community?
I coach high school swimming too. So I did convince one of my high school swim teams to do a relay for Bear Lake, that got me all my started swimming has a race the 3rd Saturday of August every year where you swim across it. Just it's 6.5 miles, but they call it a 10K because that's close enough.
Yeah.
And I did convince one of my high school groups of 3 boys to do a relay across that.
Awesome.
I think that I've tried to push some other kids towards it, and they always say that I'm scared of the grass and the fish and everything that's going to get me. But I did convince one group to do a relay, which was kind of fun.
That's great. Yeah. And
they beat me, which they were like, are you happy to beat you? And I was like, no, like, I'm glad you beat me. Like, because I was their coach. I want to see them succeed. And so exactly. I thought it was fun to see them beat me. And so.
Yeah. So 2014, you finished Manhattan. That was a while ago.
It was a while ago.
Have you been up to anything since then?
Well, so I had shoulder surgery in 2015. So I didn't do any long swims. I mean, I did, training just, in the pool. I didn't do any long swims 2015. 2016 I did, so Bear Lake, I did the length of it, which was 19 miles. And I was the first person to ever do a double width of Bear Lake. And so, and a couple men had done the length, but I wanted to be the first female to do the length. And so I did that in 2016. And that was actually like my hardest one, even though it's the lake I train in all the time. And I'm so familiar with that water. I was nauseated and like lightheaded and dizzy the whole swim. Because the exhaust from the boat. And so I was breathing in the exhaust the whole time, and I just got more and more sick. And but I was like, this swim is like should be so easy compared to these other ones. Like I'm not gonna stop swimming. So I was sick, and I was just like my time was a bit slower than I was hoping for, but I finished it even though I was not fast. But that was actually the hardest swim, even though it was a local one, and I just had the person that runs the race, who is kind of the head of our local swim club. He did the boat, and my parents were my crew. But that was hard just because I was so sick from the exhaust fumes. And so I like the boat to be on my right so I can breathe to my left. But I that's when I learned I might have to learn to bilateral breathe on these long swims, not just in a pool. So that if I need to have the boat on the other side so the exhaust isn't like blowing in my face, I can do that.
Right.
So I mean, it was uneventful. Like the water was like glass, and conditions were fine, but like I just felt so sick on that one. So I've never thrown up on a swim before, but I threw up like the moment I got out on that one, just because I.
Oh, really?
So.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. I think of that lake as having a lot of boat traffic. Did you go at a time of year when it wasn't?
I mean, the boat traffic is really bad. I mean, because it's big enough that like if you're within half a mile of the shore, then the boat traffic, like especially around the marina, it's really big. But we started the swim at 8 p.m. and so swam through the middle of the night, and I finished at 7 a.m. And so there was no one out in the dark. On that. So there wasn't any boat traffic on that. And then I have had some boat traffic on there before, because when you do like the width, you start right by the marina, and so you have to swim past all the boats coming out of the marina. So we just have to, I don't know, we're just careful with it. Like the kayak is like 2 feet from me instead of like 10 feet, and just put the orange flag up and flag people down. And we definitely had to like stop and tread for a second. Like, oh, that person is not slowing down. Like, let's let them pass so that we're safe. And over.
Exactly. Yeah. So, cool. That's awesome. I'd love to. I've thought of doing that lake before. Maybe I'll talk to you if I come that way.
I swim across it now, not just on the race day for the width, the 6.5 miles, 3 or 4 times a summer, just as a training swim. And it's quite far. I'm a lake swimmer at heart. Like ocean, it's not something it's because I don't live by an ocean, and so Bear Lake is by my go-to water all the time, and it's clean, and the reservoirs are not clean, at least not like that. So I love swimming there. So
awesome.
Where I went for the next little bit. And then I had the opportunity to crew for a friend that swam the length of Bear Lake, and then swam the length of Tahoe. So I guess I did that in one of those was in 2015 when I wasn't swimming with my shoulder. But that's kind of what gave me the idea of, I didn't realize people swam the length of this lake. Let's try it. Cause I was his crew. And that was terrifying because we lost him after a feed. So like his kayak was next to him, but the boat lost him, and we didn't find them for 45 minutes because it's black. And so like every like little light, we're like, oh wait, is that the headlamp? Is that the headlamp? And then it turns out like, oh no, it's the cabin at the edge of the lake. And so so it took us half an hour to find them. So that was actually my scariest ever open water thing, was when I was crewing for someone and we lost the swimmer for 45 minutes, and like they're stuck in the middle of the lake with no support boat.
Did they have a kayak with them or nothing?
They had a kayak with them.
Okay.
The kayak said he wasn't panicked because he thought we were like refueling and didn't know it because we couldn't find them. So that was actually my scariest open water experience, was when I was the crew for someone not like in the water. Right. But so that was kind of the next couple years. And then I discovered the Ocean 7 and thought, well, I did the Triple Crown. Let's try for the Ocean 7. But I didn't do anything for so I started 15 and 16 and 17, I was kind of saving up money for some of these swims, because I'm a school teacher. So I have to save up money for these.
Yes, exactly.
So I teach swimming lessons and coach on the side, so that only my swimming money is going to swimming. That's the rule I have for like my husband and I, is I won't spend my salary on swimming. I will only spend like money I make from swimming, like coaching and swimming.
There you go. Yeah.
So, I 2018, I went to attempt Molokai, and I I was really worried with like got shark shields, because like the sharks on that one were what terrified me the most, because I've heard like that was the same year, a couple months before me, there was like drone footage of like a lady being circled by sharks and then actually being bumped by sharks before she was pulled out. And I was like, it was like a month before I went. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like this is terrifying. And so I got a shark shield, like just set it up to like rent some for the swim. Started the swim, and it seemed like it was like, you know, pretty good conditions. My brother and my mom were my crew. And my brother swims and like pool swimming, and he's done like a mile or so open water. And my mom's always my crew. So I had good crew on that. And I got it halfway across in 8 hours, and I was hoping for a 15 to 16 hour finish. So I was like, oh, this is great. Like I swam in the dark. And then a current came and I swam in place for hours. And then finally they stopped me after a long time. And I kind of try and keep track of time a little bit by how many feeds have I done, because I do a feed every half hour. Mm-hmm. And at one point I was like, I know I've done more feeds than 15 hours worth, but I've done enough now. I don't know exactly where I am, but I was guessing I was around 20 hours. Mm-hmm. And so my brother was like, hey, wait. And I'm when I feed, like I have a feed and then I put my head down and go, and I don't stop. I don't talk. I don't want them to tell me anything. So I started to put my head down to go, and my brother's like, wait, we need to talk to you. And I was like, don't tell me I'm going backwards. And he's like, well, that's exactly what's happening. And I was like, and I was kidding when I said that. Yeah. And he was like, oh, so I was going backwards. So, and he told me, he's like, we let you fight in place for, 8 hours, and we let you fight. And now you've been going backwards for like 2 or 3 hours. And he said the current is just too strong. The boat is now actually getting pushed backwards unless they go into a stronger like motor, like they can't even go forward. So we're going to have to pull you. So I was really upset, because they told me, they're like, your stroke rate was 60 strokes per minute, like at the start. And now 19 hours later, it is still 60 strokes per minute. Right. And so I was really upset on that one, because it was the conditions. And so I got pulled on that one.
Yeah.
And as I thought about it, I was like, well, I have never done 19 hours before. I have so I tried to look for the positive, but I was still bummed that like, okay, well, I had this swim, and he's like, yeah, you should have had a 16 hour finish, and 19 hours later you were not even halfway across.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. So, but I guess at least I knew I could swim longer.
19 hours. Yeah. There's the positive.
so I was pulled, but at least I knew it wasn't me. And so, but I also, and that one, I had like lots of jellyfish stings. I even had like a sting across my lips. So my mouth was swollen. Oh, and, I discovered sea lice, because at first they were like, oh, be warned of the Portuguese man of war. Like, those are brutal. And so I got a sting, and I was like, well, this isn't that bad. And then like 2 minutes later, I got another one. And then like, they're like, oh, that's sea lice. You're going to feel that constantly. And I was like, oh, okay. And then when I actually got stung, I was like, oh, that's what they were talking about. But, so I also knew I could, I don't know, get stung by jellyfish and be okay. And so that was my, I don't know, my experience on that. And I swam with Matt, who was like, he was great. And he was like, no, you're really like, you should have, like, Mother Nature just didn't cooperate today. Like you were fine. And so, so I was like, well, I'll have to come back and try it later, I guess. So then I went to Sugaru. I wanted to attempt that, because I really was trying to do 2 that year. And I had never done 2 before. So I went to Sugaru, also in 2018, and, to swim on that one. And I actually didn't make it that year. So I have had two attempts I didn't make, and they were both like 6 weeks apart. And so I was, it was a little devastating. Sugaru was me. I got super sick. And in fact, the crew was like, you're moving fine, and the conditions are perfect. Like, why are you getting out? And I was blacking out to the point where like, I couldn't even see the boat. And so like physically, like I was, my arms were fine, and I was stroking fine, and my speed was actually fine. But every feed I was like, they would like throw it and they'd hit me in the head, and they're like, well, why didn't you didn't feel the rope? And I was like, no, I didn't feel the rope, and I couldn't see it. And they're like, well, can you see the boat? And I was like, well, occasionally, like I'm kind of blacking out.
Oh, geez.
So my parents, who were my crew again, were like, we feel like if you're blacking out that badly, like from our standpoint, you look fine, like you're stroking fine, your speed is fine. but we probably ought to pull you. And I didn't fight it because I knew like, if I'm blacking out, I probably shouldn't be doing this like kind of dangerous swim. And so I got pulled out on that one, but I wasn't super upset because I could tell like something is wrong with me and I probably shouldn't push through. But the crew spoke, even they had a translator, but the English was so limited. Like they were so confused. Like, you were swimming and you're moving and like the conditions are perfect. Like, why are we stopping? Like they were like, are you tired? And I was like, no, I'm not tired. Like, I wouldn't get out if I'm tired. Like, you're going to get tired. But and we figured out, so my dad is definitely like we're here, let's see things while we're here. So we actually did a really long hike that day, and it was in like 104-degree weather and with limited water. So like, we think I was super dehydrated before we started swimming.
You hiked before the swim?
Yeah, because my dad, I don't know, he's a very strong personality and like, hey, we're here and we're never going to be here again. So we need to do this now while we're here. And so it wasn't like a hike, but it was like, walking all around this city and this park, and there were hills and like, and it was still steep and I don't know. So I think I was dehydrated. Yeah. But I also learned about food. So I love the Japanese food, but it's also very different than what I don't, Japanese food in America is different than Japanese food in Japan. Yeah. So it was like raw fish for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it's like, it was delicious, but I'd never had it before. Not to that extent. Yeah. I think it was also just, I woke up even that morning kind of feeling like I just feel a little bit off, but I was like, maybe it's nerves, but I don't normally get sick from nerves. And so I was sick a little bit. So I think it was the food. I also learned like a hot plate and pasta is not a heavy thing to pack. And I've had pasta before. So I actually I was supposed to swim Tsugaru again in 2020, and with COVID, it didn't happen. So they just this week actually emailed me saying I'm on the list for 2022. So I'm waiting to hear back when my window is. So I've learned with Japan, like I will bring a hot plate and pasta so that I can have food that I'm used to, and I won't hike the day before. Right.
And drink lots of water. Yeah.
So that was, that was a really hard summer for me because I had two like 6 weeks apart, just swims that were failed attempts. One due to weather and one that was me. And and I was very much like, I won't quit under any circumstances. So it was really hard. Like, there was a circumstance like I got pulled, and then I was like, but then people are going to think I'm a quitter, and like, does it mean I'm a quitter? And then I was self-doubting. So that was actually really hard. That was a hard summer that way. So then I went and just did some other local, like even just like a week or two after, like, okay, I need to do this like 10-mile swim in a lake just to prove to myself, like, I can do this. So so it was just a 10-mile swim in a lake, like not as long, but like, just like, okay, I can still do this. I'm fine. And then actually COVID hit. So I was supposed to swim Tsugaru in 2020 and that didn't happen. So kind of waiting on that. Oh, I guess I did Gibraltar. I forgot. That was 2017. I did Gibraltar.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I did do. Cool. So I was hoping by 20 to have like 5 of the Ocean 7 swims in, and I still only have 3, but Gibraltar was fantastic. The Mediterranean was so beautiful. And I swam the end of October. So I swam with 2 English gentlemen. The weather had been bad. So I was signed up to do a solo. And they said, well, our season is only like 2 weeks left and we have this many swims to get in. And so you guys are all here and the weather's been bad. So we're going to put you together, even though you're not quite the same speed. So you just need to stay with whoever the slowest swimmer is.
Wow. That's some pressure.
So I was like, okay, well, like if I'm the slowest, like, am I going to be holding everyone back? And so I was a little worried about that. I actually was the fastest of the 3. And 2 of us were about the same. But it all worked out. And it was actually a really positive experience. So there was one person who he had learned how to swim with this in his, like swim in his mind. And they were both from England. They were friends. They came together. And so they said they decided to learn how to swim like 2 years before that, so they could do this swim. And this was their first big swim. And so one guy like was fine and one struggled, but he finished. And so we would swim a little bit and then, he's a little bit behind. So we would just stop and tread and just chat like while he was catching. And and the conditions were perfect. So there was no current, which I know there can be strong currents on the Gibraltar swim, but we didn't have current. So they let us keep going. And so we'd swim and then we'd chat while we were letting this other gentleman catch up. And then at the end, we all chatted on the boat after, and like he finished it. And like, and I think it was really positive because this other person was struggling. We were able to like cheer him on and like, look, like you're just swim to us and like, you can make it to us again. And then like, okay, like don't swim like to Morocco, swim to us.
Yeah.
So it was really positive. And we had pilot whales that came up, and like a pod of pilot whales that came up and swam right next to us. And even though it was like October, it was, southern Spain. So it was still a really pleasant, sunny day. And so I really enjoyed the Gibraltar swim. And I do these swims like just to show myself I can do them. I don't care what my time is. So, I mean, I have like a rough, like, I'd like to finish in this time, but if I don't, like, at least if I finish it, that's my goal. And so we finished slower than I had planned, but I got to like make friends with these people and kind of hear their swim story. And so I really liked that swim just because it was such a great experience. And so Gibraltar was really fun. And then we toured Spain for a week.
Yeah, so. Very cool.
So
it sounds like a fun, like social, like the social marathon swim. Kind of cool.
Social, like, okay, let's swim and then we'll chat for a few minutes because we're trying to encourage this other person on and support the other person on. So great. So that was, that's, I don't know, that's kind of, and then my next one is looking forward to Tsugaru again. And I guess I did sign up. I'm also for the 2023 season. I signed up for the Cook Strait. Oh, so wow. I'm in contact with Philip Rush for that and for that. So that's that. Yeah, those are my swims and I kind of where I'm hoping to go from here.
Very cool. How was the pandemic for you in Utah?
Weird as in like I saw on the news like everything was shut down, but in Utah, like especially where it's a small town and it's a very and where the pandemic became so political in the US, like very conservative area, like life seemed very normal.
Interesting. Yeah.
I would see on the news that like things weren't normal, but for us it seemed very normal. And I'm a school teacher, so school shut down and I was teaching from home, but we still had to go into the school and teach, or so for at least the first little bit that we were shut down until they realized it was going to be for the rest of the school year. But where I'm the swim coach for the school, my principal said, well, because there are two of us that are like co-swim coaches. So he said, as long as you're not alone in the building, as long as the two of you go together and you're like on opposite ends of the pool, so you're kind of spaced out, you can go swim. So I actually had more pool time. Oh, wow. During the shutdown than like when all the pools were closed. Because I was a swim coach. And so I could just go when it was closed and swim. And so I could go swim for hours alone in the pool without having to share the lane with anyone. And then I did start open water swimming much earlier that season because then they were like, well, while we're going to take advantage of the pandemic and while the pool is closed, we're going to regrout all the tiles and fix everything. And so they shut the pool down. So then I have a reservoir that's 5 minutes from my house.
That's great.
And so I started swimming in the reservoir in May, which was a little bit colder than what I was used to, but it helped me prepare for cold water. And so I actually swam. I think I was swimming probably 45 miles a week all summer of 2020. So so I swam a lot just because there was, you couldn't go on vacation. You couldn't do anything else. So I swam and in the local reservoir. I did some 10Ks, like just again in the reservoir. But I swam, I guess we went up to Montana because we drove and I swam in like a little bit, just in some of the lakes around there and swam, but just a dip here and there. Swam in some of the lakes in the Grand Tetons. Oh, cool. Fun. Yeah. Awesome. So yeah. Thanks for sharing your story, Joelle. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Well, thank you for letting me share it. So
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Have you heard of the Intrepid Water Accountability Group? We'll support and encourage each other on a private chat platform, pursue monthly challenges both in the water and on land, and meet virtually once a month to dive deep on a topic. If you'd like to join a group of like-minded limit pushers from around the globe, join the Intrepid Water Accountability Group. Find out more at intrepidwater.com.